First of all, let us be clear. Anti-Semitism, yes, it's a problem for Jews. And as a matter of fact, in Germany today, more than 80% of the Jews don't feel safe anymore. But more than anything, anti-Semitism is a threat to the overall democratic fabric of Western societies at large. And of course, that includes Berlin. And we should treat it as such, not as an isolated phenomenon relevant for a minority, but as a major and systemic cultural threat to the freedoms of Europe, the freedoms of the Western world that we cherish so much. And this is important to keep in mind because it reminds us that we have a lot of issues in common, be it Israel threatened by Islamist forces, anti-democratic forces in the region, with the classical example of Hamas massacres of October 7th, trying to destroy those very freedoms. Is not so different than the anti-democratic forces today, and a lot of them of Islamist nature, trying to change the face of Europe, and yes, very much so the face of Berlin. And once we established what problem we're facing, it is easier to develop an adequate strategy to deal with it.
And to that exactly point, what steps can be taken? You talk about a strategy to deal with it. How do authorities tackle these kinds of hate crimes? Briefly, please.
So, in your question, we can see part of the approach that hasn't worked so far, meaning how do we tackle the crimes? The crimes are the end of the equations. The crimes, the anti-Semitism, the attacks. By the way, just like with the Holocaust didn't start with the Holocaust. It started with years of propaganda and information warfare of a not so different kind of what we're seeing today. So the issue is the root causes is what needs to be tackled, and not just the physical threats themselves. And here I want to be very clear. Berlin's mayor, for example, Kai Wegner, is a fantastic Lord Mayor. He's good for the Jews in Berlin, and he's showed a lot of solidarity and moral and strategic clarity after October 7th, keeping up the Israeli flag on his municipality until the last hostage was freed, helping me establish one hostage square there after the other in Berlin, in the historical center where decades before the books of Jewish authors had been burned. So the attitude is right. What still is missing is a paradigm shift, understanding that we're not dealing with single cases, right, and we're not dealing, we can't focus on the actual physical threat. We have to deal with the root causes, and they are today subverting a lot of the healthy infrastructure from education, right, to municipalities all over.
Melody Sakarovich, this conversation will continue. A long road ahead. Thank you very much for being with us on I-24 News.
Thank you.
And with that, we wrap up this edition of The Rundown. Coming up next is Opinionated with Benjamin Anthony at the top of the hour. I'm Vanessa Levine in Tel Aviv.